BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for betting on all of the madness. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything college basketball, $200,000 bracket contest, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Welcome to another edition of Bleav in Giants. Bob Papa, two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks. So we're through the big wave of free agency, Carl. Still don't know who's going to be the quarterback for the Giants or some combination of quarterback.
Sure.
But the Giants went out and they worked on their secondary, adding a safety and a corner. I really like the Adebo signing. I even like Holland. I like some of the things that they've done, but the work is far from complete. What's your thoughts on the way this whole thing is played out with the quarterback?
Well, I mean, this is where you are, and the interesting part about it is that there's so many teams without quarterbacks and so few available, and so you're almost forced to wait some of these things out. I'm of the opinion you get to a point you have to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? And you know, I've had my things to say about Rodgers. Again, I don't know him personally, but if they feel that he's the right guy and worth waiting for, and feel like they have a pretty good chance to get him, then I'm going to support that. None of these guys are perfect, right? That's why they're still free agents. Winston, Russ, and Rodgers, and then you got
Flacco.
Flacco, and then Brissett. People were saying could be available. So listen, it is what it is. They've got to get one. I think they will get one, and they'll get one that has to produce for them.
It's interesting because there's really two angles here, right? First of all, this is weird because they're not waiting. They're kind of waiting on Rodgers, but Rodgers is waiting on Minnesota as of this recording. And Minnesota is deciding whether they want to bring him in or not. So he's waiting, and he's got everybody else on hold. I think like a Flacco, someone like that, then you know that they're drafting somebody because I think if you bring in Rodgers, you're probably saying, okay, you're our guy this year and maybe even next year. I think the other guys are placeholders. I kind of believe, though, Carl, the more we get into this, I wouldn't be shocked if the top two quarterbacks go 1-2.
Well, listen, it is such a roller coaster when you hear people talk about these two young men that are coming out in the draft. And, 1 minute you hear a guy might go as low as 6. Then, the next week they're both rated pretty high, depending on who puts up the video and the cut-ups of those guys' plays. And then, out of nowhere, I've been seeing Jackson Dart has comparable numbers to Shedeur Sanders, right? Well, that all things can two things can be true, but I don't think anyone had him projected as a top 2 or 3 or top 5 or 10 quarterback. But it's just these people are pushing whatever agenda they need to push this time of year. It's always like that. So we won't know until draft day where these guys are going. I think the Giants have a pretty good idea in a few contingencies. At 3, I think they're in a good position with kid like Hunter and Abdul sitting there if the two quarterbacks go first. And then, if they go first, then Jackson Dart is in the conversation later on in the draft, right? They just start to monitor that. But I don't think they're going to leave this draft without a rookie quarterback on the roster. And the top 3 or 4 are the guys that will probably be options to them. Because if the other 2 go first, then it's Milroe and Jackson Dart, and I don't know if there's another one that people are talking about, but they'll walk away with one of these rookie quarterbacks, in my opinion. And whatever, even if Rodgers is on the roster, um, they're going to get a rookie quarterback. They're going to get one of these guys because it kind of fast tracks. It puts them in advanced placement in terms of their learning the pro game. If you have a Rodgers on the um, the roster, it changes your way of thinking. You see the game differently. Um, that's my opinion. If Rodgers, even if Russell Wilson is on the roster, a young rookie will see the game. He will see quarterbacking at a graduate level, um, and that's what they're going to need in order to get a guy ready to go.
I want to talk about the Paulson Adebo signing. So, 3 years, 54 million, 36 million fully guaranteed. He suffered a broken leg last year. He's a productive player. I like him as a player. And he does something that really nobody on the Giants has been proven to show is the fact that when he gets his hands on a football, he's going to
Yeah,
catch it.
yeah.
My question to you is, and people always ask me, who do you think the Giants are going to draft? And people have been asking, I'm sure they ask you this all the time. Oh, what are they going to do in the draft? And I'm like, well, first of all, you have to look at free agency because free agency is a little bit of a cheat code. What do they do in free agency will shift a little bit what they're going to do in the draft. Like, let's say the quarterbacks go 1-2. Ward and Sanders go to Tennessee and Cleveland. That means the Giants are sitting there at 3. And anybody that you talk to will tell you that maybe the 2 best players in the draft,
Hmm.
non quarterbacks, are Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, right?
Hmm.
But with the signing of Adebo and the fact that in the 2023 draft, they used a first round draft pick on Deonte Banks, wouldn't that kind of lead you to believe that probably not going to draft Travis Hunter in that spot?
Well, they also spent a high draft pick on Kayvon Thibodeau. So you're just basically you can never have uh, too many good players, in my opinion. It's up to a defensive coordinator to figure out um, how to get those guys on the field and doing the best that they can for your team. I don't have a problem with any of it because the way the league is run now, offenses are so multiple, right? If you have guys that are athletic and you kind of change the dynamic of how offenses want to approach you, because right now the spread offenses are look for the matchup, put your best player on their weakest player, and you can do that by sheer numbers. That's what offenses do now. They put 4 good receivers out there, and you got three good cover guys. Well, um, you can kind of guess they're gonna figure out how to scheme the guy on the weak link open. But if you can put, your best 5 defensive backs out on the field, and sometimes 6, you'll be ahead of the game. And then if it's when it comes to pass rush, you got some really good packages. If it's Abdul Carter, but none of it matters to me, Bob, if they are not allowed to be um, at their best within a scheme, right? I have concerns about the defense. And it's not a concern about the defensive coordinator, even though it's his job to make sure these guys are put in position to be their best. They were not last year. I don't know what the reasons were. Dexter Lawrence went out, and it became basically like the offensive line, Jenga, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just
Whoa.
like it couldn't plug, couldn't stop anything. So I would love to know what type of defense they're going to be this year. I think it's important that when these coaches address the media, I would implore those who sit in that scrum, that first media scrum, start to ask the coaches, what type of offense are you going to be this year? What type of defense are you going to be this year? If they can't tell you that, then you should be concerned. They can tell you based on the personnel that they have, they should be able to do X, Y, and Z. Don't fall for the jargons of smart, tough, dependable. That should be washed off the wall anyway. Um, they need to articulate what type of team they are. Each year teams change. They're never the same. And I learned that when um, I used to report every training camp, not every training camp, every mini camp, which would be the equivalent of OTAs now. Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells would stand up in front of the room, based on our draft, based on what we're doing, based on what we need to do to stop, at that time, the Washington Redskins, right? This is the type of team we need to be this year. This is the type of team. So if it's a zone, if it's a man, you would know because we practiced the hell out of it from day one. But they articulated that. I don't know what type of defense this is. I don't know. Well, again, I have an idea what the offense is. You just got to get the quarterback in it. Um, but you can accumulate a lot of players, but I think you kind of need to know what type of defense you are, and that always can change. You have to make adjustments, but there has to be a profile, and I don't know what that is.
I think that they made a big mistake last year not keeping Ashawn Robinson, and he wound
Mhm.
up going to Carolina
Mhm.
and played at a Pro Bowl level. And as great as Dexter Lawrence is, he's not Superman.
Right,
Like they
right.
they 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 tried all these these young guys, and they had all these guys in there, and I think they learned a lesson. So they brought in Roy Robertson Harris. They brought in Ledbetter, who played with
Mhm.
Jacksonville last year, who are pros, who have a body of work.
Mhm.
And none of them are stars, but they're proven NFL players. And then
Mhm.
Golston, they brought from the Cowboys because, they haven't replaced that Leonard Williams position either.
Correct,
So
correct.
I'm not saying Chauncey Golston is Leonard Williams, but again, is another professional with a track record.
Mhm.
So that kind of makes me happy. And then the Carter situation, if he was sitting there at 3, as Ernie of course he said, you can never have enough pass rushers.
Right.
And I mean, who's to say you can't have Burns, Thibodeau, and Chauncey and Abdul Carter on the field at the same time? Like
Sure.
you can.
Yeah, you
That's where
absolutely can.
that's where the creativity comes in.
Right.
Um, the offensive line, they really didn't do anything there. I mean, they filled it in with some veteran guys, but it's nothing that's going to change the landscape of things. I mean, Hudson is going to be like a swing tackle guy, but they still have work to do on that thing. One of the moves that surprised me was Darius Slayton re-signing.
Hmm.
I was a little shocked by that. I mean, it's about $12 million a year. That's kind of the going rate for the
Yeah.
second/third tier wide receivers.
Hmm.
Um, I was surprised he chose to sign back because I remember, he talked about it a lot openly about the losing and not being able to
Yeah.
win. I was a little surprised that he re-upped with the team because I thought there would be some other spots for him, probably for less money.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's good to have him back because he's a really good dude.
Well, I think there were some learnings that resulted as a result of what happened the last offseason and the one before that, in terms of the front office approach, and understanding that um, analytics don't have a heartbeat. that actual players play the game, impact your locker room. And you have to factor not just the ability and the age, but you also have to understand and have a finger on the pulse of a young locker room. This is still the second youngest um, team in the NFL. Um, he's one of their respected leaders, not just by word, but by action. And he's reliable. Um, he is a leader. He's smart, and he's a teacher as well. Um, so I'm sure he probably thought about entertaining other offers just to walk out the door, but I'm glad that um, he was able to sign back with the Giants for, just for his ability, but also his impact in the locker room. And I think, when you are making these decisions as a general manager, I think, Joe Schoen has probably heard enough from the fan base and seen enough from people that have walked out of the door that did not resign. Now, there are a lot of circumstances that factor in of why guys are not with the team. Salary cap in some instances, the year that Julian Love and Xavier McKinney, and when I say salary cap, yeah, they could have afforded to sign those guys, but were they the biggest need? When they were they were trying to get out of cap hell and they needed to allocate dollars towards an offensive line, right? They didn't hit it right. And McKinney went on to continue his career as a great safety. Julian Love went on to be a Pro Bowler. But you have to factor certain things in. You just can't say, well, you ain't worth the money, you got to go. Sometimes you are. If it's within striking range and you want to be penny wise and dollar foolish, you just have to factor those things in. And I think that was something that we saw play out um, on TV live. And, the perception is Joe Schoen doesn't handle his players the right way, right? The Saquon Barkley situation is what it is, right? Um, there were 2 off seasons of them trying to get something done. It didn't. There was also a moment where I thought you had the clues right in front of you when the owner says he's by far our most popular player. Um, I would lose sleep if he went to the Eagles. He basically gave you a couple extra $1 million not to let that happen. And you decided that that was something that you wanted to do. So, but he wasn't going to be the guy that we saw in the Super Bowl and leading up to the Super Bowl with the Giants. But I think that's where, being a general manager and a guy who has to sign players, yes, they all say you can't be emotionally attached, right? But you have to be emotionally aware of the dynamics. And it's just, you can't be ruled by analytics. And then, when these reports come out of the locker room that, he's telling the kid don't sign a long-term lease and things of that nature, you know, yeah, probably gets said more than we know to agents, but it's probably not the thing that you want to tell a 20-something-year-old to try to get him to sign, right? I was in situations like that where the head coach locked me in his Cadillac on a rainy day, wrote some numbers on a piece of paper, and said that the deal was only as good. It was only the deal was only valid while we were in the car. If I get out the car, the deal was off the table. I got out the car, but we got a deal. We got a deal done.
Different
Um,
world, man. Different
yeah,
world.
yeah, but it wasn't strong arm tactics, right? We had a great conversation about an hour, and then all of a sudden he, started to scribble some things on paper, but it's different, right? You got to have a feel for humans, really. I mean, it just doesn't come down to the analytics. And I get that general managers cannot be emotionally attached and owners alike. but you've got to make decisions based on not just what the numbers tell you, because the numbers don't give you the whole story.
I have Saquon Barkley fatigue. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Like, like at the combine, they're again asking Joe Shane about Saquon, and a year ago, it's like, listen, last year I understood it right through the Super Bowl,
mhm,
and to Saquon Barkley holding the Lombardi Trophy, and I got why from a giant reporter standpoint,
mhm.
it was part of the story. But once it ended and the confetti came down, and then we got like to the combine, and I'm sure it's going to come up again at like the owners meet. Like, enough already. It's
Yeah,
over.
that
Like,
ship sailed.
yeah. Like
Ship sailed, and he's got a big contract. And he earned all the money that he got. And hopefully, if there are other running backs in the league that can put up great numbers, the dynamic will change. That running backs will start to be appreciated more. So there is an upside to that, right?
but it's
Tyrone
not really
Tracy,
it's not really happening. I mean, other than Saquon getting paid, and I'm sure Derrick Henry will get some kind of new contract. But look at
yeah.
the amount of running backs that have kind of remained on the
Well,
market.
they're not unique in
Correct.
in
But there,
what.
but there are some players that are not unique in free agency at other positions that have gotten paid.
Well,
They're like
here's the
good
thing,
players, but
right?
not great.
Right. So here's the thing with that. It's the value system again. It's the analytics and the impact, right? I think Saquon Barkley was awarded a $20 million contract because of his impact on that team, not just as a player. And I have a lot of friends, Mike Quick and I are really close, and we talk, and I'm like, how the locker room love? So the locker room absolutely loves him. He's a great locker room guy. And so these are the things you reward. Um, but also the fact that we're sitting here with four over 35 quarterbacks, 35-year-old quarterbacks that are viable candidates tells you that the league don't have the riches at that position that they used to have, right? The fact that Anthony Richardson was touted pre-draft about all of his abilities, right? What he could do. AR-15. After his rookie year, Daniel Jones is now competing for his job. It
Yeah,
tells
2 years. They
you,
get 2 years of 2 years of injury and 47% completion rate, and they're like going
correct,
into year three. We got to at least bring somebody in here that could play.
correct. So that tells me the league has a quarterback problem, right? And so how do you offset quarterback problems? You offset them the same way that you used to, running backs. You think Jalen Hurts doesn't love the fact that he doesn't have to deal with uh, the criticism of what he can and can't do when the game is on his shoulders? He just hands the ball off now. And then his job becomes so much easier. Now, Jalen Hurts has ability more than people give him credit for. But a lot of these mediocre quarterbacks that are starters in this league or above average quarterbacks, if they have good running backs, their job becomes easier. And it doesn't matter, in my opinion, and it never did, where the money was divvied up. You can say you picked the guy first in the draft, but you know what he is coming in. You can't fool yourself into thinking, well, when his contract is up, I got to pay him $60 million a year, and you haven't supplemented anything around him, right? So if you know what he is, you just can't say he needs to be something he's not. You got to put better players around him, and that means sometimes you've got to pay the position that really keeps the boat afloat, which is the running back position. So hopefully, with the money that Saquon got and the impact that he's had, if you find players like that, you'll be able to pay them because you know you can't rely on just a quarterback.
You got anything else Giant related? I mean, there's not. I mean, the last time we did one of these, Stafford was still possibly going
Sure.
to be had.
Yeah.
And listen, I admire the guy. He took a lot less money to stay in
Mm-hmm.
California and stay with the Rams, but he's got, kids. He's got his wife. They're comfortable. And listen, that team right now, if you look at it on paper, the Rams might be the best team in the NFC West.
Yeah.
In fact, in fact, based on the attrition that happened in Seattle, and based on the attrition, the salary shedding that's gone on in San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
um, and Arizona is still kind of building, and there's uncertainty with the quarterback. I think the Rams right now on paper are the best team in the division.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
he decides to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't want to uproot his family, all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so now we wait on whoever else the quarterback is going to be. Who knows? But anything else? Anything else
Listen,
about the
the
Giants?
draft is going to, the Giants have a lot of prime picks in the draft. That's going to help. Um, I just don't like the dating game of, the girl telling you to wait because she might want to be with somebody else and you're just going to be her second choice. I'm not big on that. And if a guy tells you he's waiting on another team before he can commit to you, I think you pretty much got what your answer is. And if you wait and he finally does come around, does he really want to be here? But I mean, listen, if they, like I said, whatever quarterback they bring here, I'm going to support. But when they say you're making decisions like your job depends on it, that should be that way every year anyway for coaches and general managers. So if it works out, it's mutually beneficial. If it doesn't, um, well, we all know. So I'm rooting for the best. That's all I got.
I know what else has worked out really well.
What's that?
St. John's
Yeah, man. How about that? How about the
starter and St.
Johnnies?
John's. What a perfect combination.
Yeah, well, we had a really really good week last week during the Big East tournament when everybody was in town and Macy's and Lids partnered with us and we were able to really have some fun. We had a hiccup early, which I didn't really sweat as much as people wanted it to be a failure. Um,
What is it with people that want everything to just
I know.
fail?
People want it to be a failure, and I'm just like, bro, the product's going to be there. You're just a day late. It's not like I painted this picture of something that's going to show up and it never does. I knew that. But everybody, it turned out great. We had just so much great programming, and if you're following my Instagram, you got great interviews with coaches and legendary players and some of the content that we put out was just incredible, and it's still coming too. But I'm rooting for the Johnnies. The Michigan State Spartans are on the same side of the bracket that they are. So at some point,
Ooh.
if they continue to win, they'll probably meet at the Elite Eight. And
And by the way, two of the modern day great coaches
yeah,
in college basketball,
yeah,
Pitino and Izzo.
they figured out how to connect in this new era. And I'm looking forward to that. I hope that happens. And yeah, I'm going to root for Michigan State if they play each other. And the consolation prize won't be that bad if Michigan State loses. But um, that is my dream matchup because those teams are so similar. Good defensive teams. When they shoot well, it's really good. When they don't, they either win by a little or lose by a little, but they are always in games. So looking forward to that.
What were some of the hotter selling items outside of St. John's? Was it Georgetown?
Yeah, well,
Uh
UConn was really hot.
Syracuse?
Syracuse was not there. They were
Oh yeah,
not
that's
in the
right.
current Big East.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know what? I'm dating
Yeah,
myself a little bit.
I wanted to put them in, but there was just no way I could do it. Um, I think everybody came out and supported. UConn was great. Um, Georgetown, obviously. Now, there were a few schools that were upset that I didn't realize that it would I would get the backlash that I got. Um, Creighton, Xavier, Butler, and Marquette were the
I
four
know,
schools
but they're
that
not
didn't get
part of
jacket.
what you were selling.
Yes and no, right? It was biggies. And I gave them everything else, all the apparel, all the headwear, and they bought it and they supported that. But I get it when the entire Big East community is going crazy over these jackets and they're like, why don't we have one? And my honest answer is the retailer did not choose those four because they didn't see, they were more on the legacy side, right? But the good news is those schools will have starter jackets by the fall. And we will do something special in those cities on campus or near campus with another retail partner to make sure that those products are in the marketplace for them as well. So I get it. They felt that they missed out on some stuff, but they supported with all the other stuff that they purchased. But when you get a call from CLC, the Collegiate Licensing Company, asking why these other schools were not represented with one item. It tells you the power of that one item, number one.
Correct.
Um, but it also just tells you the strength of these fan bases. They want to be a part of all of it, and they should.
I'm telling you, you got to come up if next year for Georgetown, you got to come up with like the sweatshirt that has the Velcro John Thompson towel on it.
That would be
That'll be
cool.
so good. All right, so that's and when there's some news of significance, we'll hop back on and we'll just kind of keep plodding along here and see what happens with this quarterback situation. Which veteran they wind up bringing in? Is it a veteran to start or a veteran to mentor a backup quarterback? We'll find that out. I would assume sooner rather than later.
Yep.
Uh,
And then there's the whole draft where they're going to fill in all the other blanks. But I'm looking forward to seeing what this quarterback situation, the veteran quarterback, is going to be. Whoever they bring in, he's going to be the starter day one, and the rookie will have to make his way in. So we'll see what happens.
all right. How do we like to end it?
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Bleav in
Bleav in
Giants.
Giants.